Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're just waiting a few moments for more people to join. Hello, everyone. Welcome to UCL, University College London's the Bartlett Faculty of the Built Environment. My name is Kemi Hassan, and I'm the Outreach Officer in the Built Environment faculty. Thank you all so much for attending the Bartlett Promise PhD Scholarship presentation and Q&A. This session will begin with a short presentation delivered by one of our current Bartlett students, who will introduce herself to you just before she starts. On your screen, you'll find that there's a Q&A button. If you have any questions for us while the presentation is going on, please type your question in the Q&A bar. If you look through that and see a question that you also want to know the answer to, you can tick on that question. That would let us know to prioritize any popular questions that come through. Right now, I'm going to hand over to our panel members to introduce themselves.
That's me, and my name's written first, so let me go first. My name's Kamna Patel. I'm the Vice Dean for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion in the Bartlett, and I'm also an Associate Professor in the Development Planning Unit, also known as the DPU. I am part of the Bartlett Promise team, along with two other colleagues, Ian Borden and Sarah Rolfe, and the three of us have been developing and devising the Bartlett Promise since its inception through to today, and I'll be happy to receive any of your questions.
Hello, my name is Stephen Marshall. I'm a professor in the Bartlett School of Planning, and my role here is as faculty graduate tutor for research, which means I deal with a lot of the issues for all doctoral students across the Bartlett Faculty of the Built Environment. So I know a little about a lot of stuff, but other people know more of the specifics.
HM, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm a current PhD student and a PhD student representative for research students at the Bartlett faculty. I'm in my 4th year and looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. And right now, I'll pass you all over to our student, Christy, for the presentation.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Christy. I'm currently a master's student at the Bartlett School of Planning. I'm studying international planning, and right now I'll give you a quick overview of the Bartlett Promise Scholarship. All right. So what is the Bartlett Promise? So essentially, this is a scholarship that really aims to enable students from different backgrounds, particularly underrepresented backgrounds, in the Bartlett to pursue the PhD here at the Bartlett in the UCL. Our goal really is to provide the opportunity of pursuing higher education for all, regardless of the means, and so as to diversify the student body at the UCL and later on in the built environment industry. So what does the Bartlett's Promise Scholarship cover? Firstly, you will be fully funded until you're awarded your degree by UCL, and this is defined to up to a maximum of 4 years. Your fees will then be paid directly to UCL. In addition to that, you will also receive an annual stipend of £17,631 to cover your living costs, and this will subject to change in the coming years, but this number will be for the year 2021 to 2022, and this will be paid in 3 term installments. You'll also get an annual allowance of £1,200 for your research costs. And in addition to that, all the Bartlett Promise Scholars will also receive ongoing academic and career support during your study. So who is eligible? For the criteria for 2021, all candidates must be UK domiciled with home student fees or be a forced migrant as defined by UCL. For more detailed information, you can always go check on our website, and they will have the detailed definitions as well. You also have to have an offer of admission to the Bartlett PhD program for the coming year, and you must not have already completed a PhD at UCL or anywhere else. Following to those criteria, after hitting those criteria I've mentioned in the last slide, candidates must also meet at least one of these additional criteria. For example, you have to be in financial need as assessed by UCL, be from a Black, Asian, or minority ethnic background, have a disability, have care responsibilities, etc., etc. So all this information you'll be able to find on our website as well. So the application process, as I've already mentioned, you must have already received an offer from one of the Bartlett schools to start a PhD program in the coming year, 2021 to 2022. Beyond that, the Bartlett Promise team will not be further accessing your academic ability. So to apply, please do read the FAQs carefully on our website, and you can also fill in the application form there. Applications will then be assessed against the eligibility criteria as specified, and you can always refer back to these criteria on our website. For the shortlisted candidates, you will be asked to engage in a one-to-one dialogue to discuss anything that you feel will further support your application. And these dialogues will be run by the Windsor Fellowship and will take place via phone or Zoom. And the Bartlett Promise team will be making a final decision and will notify all candidates by the 17th of September, so later this fall. So again, with the timing, the time and the deadlines, the application deadline for the scholarship will be on Friday, the 23rd of July, 11:45 p.m. British time. And the dialogue with the Windsor Fellowship will take place from Tuesday, the 10th of August, 2021 and onwards. For all successful applicants, you will be notified by email by Friday, the 17th of September, 2021. So now I will be passing the floor to our panel. And if there are any questions, feel free to pop them into the Q&A chat box. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. That was great. So just to reiterate what she said, if you have any questions, do just pop it into the Q&A function, and we will do our best to answer all your questions. We have had some questions in, so I'm just gonna start speaking to our panel about those ones. So the first one that we've had is ask, does the scholarship cover specific subjects?
Answer that, Kemi?
Yeah, sorry, yes, please, Kamna, yes.
As long as you have an offer to study for a PhD in the Bartlett, and that means one of the Bartlett schools, the subject matter itself does not matter in terms of eligibility to this particular scheme.
Thank you. Right, to the next question. Does when you apply impact your chances of success? I'll pass that over to you again, Kamna.
No, we have one deadline, and as a Promise team, we'll be looking at all of the applications that we receive the day after that deadline. So as long as you meet that deadline and there isn't room to extend it, as long as you meet that deadline, you'll be considered.
Thank you. How many Promise scholarships would be available or awarded each academic year?
For this particular scheme, we have 3 strands to the Bartlett Promise. One is for undergraduates, one is for postgraduate master's students, and one is for postgraduate research students. So for postgraduate research students, for this year, we're looking to fund up to 5 PhD students.
Thank you. The next question, do I require a willing supervisor to supervise my research? As in, I'm guessing, would that impact them being offered the scholarship? Kamna.
You would have to have an offer, and in order for you to secure an offer, you would need to have already identified a supervisor. So I'm going to pass to Stephen actually on what that process looks like to get an offer in the first place.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, for anyone wishing to do a PhD in the Bartlett, you have to put in an application. If I elaborate very briefly, the application includes a research proposal and includes like a list of your experience, effectively like a CV, and some references. So that proposal will then be passed to various staff members in the department, in the relevant department, and they will have a look at it and evaluate it. Now, in some cases, you may have a topic that you're not sure exactly where it fits in. So it could be, it could be anything. It could be, I don't know, space settlements or something, and you're not sure, it might be very innovative research and you're not sure where it fits. So in that case, you can contact someone like a departmental graduate tutor. We can elaborate on that if you're interested, but the information should be available. And so if you don't have anyone in mind as a supervisor, a department can allocate you to someone. However, if you do know someone whose research you maybe already know, or you look at the website and you look down the list of people and you spot someone who looks as if they're covering the kind of topic you're interested in, then you can contact them and discuss it and so on. So there's a number of steps involved in doing the application. But whatever happens, however you start the process ends with you being allocated a proposed supervisor, and the supervisor is part of, the proposed supervisors will be part of reviewing your topic, because they will be experts in the topic that you are wishing to become the expert in. And when you get to being made an offer, the offer will be made in conjunction with confirmation of your supervisor or your supervisory team, which is normally two supervisors. So yes, by the point you get the offer, you should know who your prospective supervisor is.
Thank you. Kamna, can I ask you this one? Is priority given to applicants if they meet more than one of the second set of criteria?
Yes. Yes, it is. We are looking to build up an understanding of students who are in the greatest position of need. This is a needs-based scholarship. So we do not take into any consideration your academic potential, the quality of your research proposal, your academic track record. We're interested in supporting students who have needs. And we've identified a number of different areas where in our academic assessments, where need is prevalent. And that means that we've honed in on financial need, on structural disadvantage in society that can come from being a racialized minority, that can come from being disabled. All of these criteria are weighted in such a way that if somebody has been affected and their life is affected by all of these different things or many of these different things, then they are more likely to receive this scholarship.
Thank you. So this, I can open this to everyone. What does the academic and career support look like as a Promise Scholar?
With all of our PhD students, there is a great deal of support that is given to them through the doctoral school. And we would be looking at, as part of being a Bartlett Promise Scholar, they would be joining a community of other Bartlett Promise Scholars, which is including our undergraduate and our postgraduate master's students. We would be looking to host a couple of events a year, and when we're allowed to, more social events that builds this scholarly community. And that would be a scholarly community that can be supportive of careers in the future. So it can be a career network, it can be a professional network, and so forth. For the specifics of academic skills and academic skill building, that we would refer students to the doctoral school and the extensive program that is put on by the UCL doctoral school, which other panelists will be better able to talk about.
I might just add, I mean, I guess we would expect there to be alumni events linked to career events. So there may be possibility of talking to other people who've already graduated and moved on to careers in the field. I think as one of the slides said, you know, the Bartlett is reflecting partly on the diversity of the industry as a whole. So, you know, people who've been successful actually making it in the world beyond the doctorate can be part of that, I would imagine.
I can add something on that. Now there's something called Patel Connect, which is connecting all the alumni. It is very easy to find someone who is working in the company or sector you would like to work after your graduation. During your PhD, you will have a point you would like to decide whether you would like to focus on research or teaching. Depending on you would like to gain more teaching skills or more research skills. For teaching skills, there is Institute of Education, and there are numerous training programs for PhD students, and you can go for one of those. And for research-based things, again, you will go to doctoral school, or you can get a training which is not offered by the UCL by getting a funding from UCL. There is this specific funding, the skill building funding or something like that, the name. And if that particular skill is not covered by the doctoral school, you can always apply for that funding and then require it from another body.
I might just add also, there are many opportunities for people to like organize their own activities, and the faculty funds some of those when people apply for them. So a year or two ago, there was a decolonial reading group where we funded a group who were wanting to explore various aspects of decolonializing the curriculum. So doctoral students could have discussions and across, bringing people together from across different parts of the faculty. So that was an initiative that was doctoral student led, and they applied to us, and they met the criteria, and we funded it. So we're as a faculty, we're always ready to respond to initiatives that people bring forward. So we would look forward to seeing any initiatives that were suggested by the doctoral students themselves.
Thank you. So the next question, does the scholarship allow for part-time studying to allow one to maybe work part-time as well?
The Bartlett Promise does not accommodate part-time study. Because the way in which we've packaged this scholarship, it is designed so that you are able to complete your studies full-time within the 4-year maximum.
Thank you. What would you say needs to be included in a Promise scholarship application to perhaps help it stand out? Kamna?
We don't need you to stand out. So you don't need to sell yourself to us, which is why there is a separate process to getting your offer to study here and then applying to the Bartlett Promise. The two are completely not related. What we're trying to understand in the application is a real sense of what is your circumstance? What are your financial circumstances of your household? What is your background? How might that have affected your abilities to study and so on? So we've got a two-stage process. The first is the initial application form, where we'll be asking quite detailed information about your finances, about your identity. And so we'd ask that you be as open and honest as you can, and be prepared, if you're called upon it, to substantiate and evidence some of the financial claims that you're making. In the second part of it, we have dialogues with the Windsor Fellowship. The dialogue is just that. It's a different kind of space where you can talk to someone and allow us to get that little bit more information about your circumstances, about your situation. The dialogues are designed so that they're conducted by someone who is not associated with the Bartlett. They're done by a separate organization. So all we receive as the Bartlett Promise team is a summary that's written by the Windsor Fellowship that allows us to fill out some of the information that might have been missing a little bit in your initial application, something that we want to find out a little bit more about. Like, for example, if you have a forced migrant status, how did that come about? What's the context in which you have that status? But you absolutely do not need to sell yourself. We just want an honest answer to every one of the questions that we're asking, and they're quite specific questions.
Brilliant, thank you. So I've got a question here regarding the dates, which we kind of did touch up during the presentation, but we've got someone who might be slightly worried that the date of maybe applying and receiving an offer to study, to pursue a PhD, and then having enough time to apply for the scholarship. Is there, do you think there's an issue there? Sorry, Kamna.
No, that's fine. There shouldn't be. I mean, of course, there'll be people that already have an offer in hand and that they can apply straight away. Otherwise, we have set the deadlines in such a way that I'm looking at the webpage now. So the deadline is the 23rd of July, by which you should submit your application for the Bartlett Promise, which means that you'd need to have an offer. You don't have to have accepted your offer at this point. You need to have a commitment, an offer letter from UCL that says that you've been accepted onto the program. We have set this deadline in discussion with Stephen and the other faculty and the other departmental tutors who process PhD applications and offer letters. And we've all agreed that there is time for people to put in their proposals, to find their research supervisors, and still to meet the Bartlett Promise deadline. But it would require moving now.
If I just add, the doctoral application process has a little bit of flexibility in it in some respects, because doing a doctorate is a unique thing. That's what makes it special and exciting. You're the only person in the world who's doing this topic, probably. So your application will, in that sense, be unique in the way that an application to a master's or an undergraduate study isn't so much, where, you know, if you meet the qualifications, you'll probably be given an offer. But doing a PhD application requires quite a bit of preparation in advance, which is really important, especially if you've been out of academia for a while, and maybe not used to sort of writing referenced essays and so on, or maybe come from a discipline that didn't involve writing essays, for example. So you have to prepare a research proposal that explains, you know, why the topic is important and significant and timely, why, in a sense, justify the need for the research, and then demonstrate why you're the person to do it. So you could have a brilliant idea, but your CV might not convince the reader that the idea can be actually done from where you are. So the reason I mention this is because we realize that people may have different degrees of being prepared, different state of readiness to be able to write an application. But your prospective supervisor should be able to help. So it's not like you just start and then just start filling in the form. You're strongly encouraged to contact someone who could be a prospective supervisor in advance. And all supervisors are used to getting approaches from people, and they realize that you may not be exactly familiar with what is needed. But don't worry about that. I would encourage you to get in touch sooner rather than later, because then that person, if they're interested in the topic, they can help you and really help you explain what you need to do. Because if they like your topic and they're enthusiastic about supervising you, they will make the time to help you get your application through. So the sooner you can get hold of someone who's the right person. Of course, some members of staff are busy or can't take on new students and so on. So it's not necessarily you will always get a positive response. But the sooner you can identify someone who's then becomes on your side, as it were, who's interested in receiving the proposal, they can then help you to write the proposal. And they can also advise you, give feedback on what you're doing normally, which means that they can in a sense help you so that you can produce a viable proposal in a reasonable amount of time. The danger is, and remembering back to when I originally did a PhD proposal, like the danger is that you could think, oh no, you might overthink everything and spend too much time worrying about it and not getting the application in on time. But because we do have a specific deadline, which normally a PhD doesn't normally have a specific deadline, but obviously if you're going for any funding, it does. So it's very important, because there's some things that aren't flexible, as Kamna was just saying. That deadline is an absolute deadline, so you need to meet that. Whereas you could submit an application that is maybe 95% there, and you could still get in. Because a PhD is unique, there's always going to be a little bit of flexibility in admitting someone. And I'd also advise, just off the top of my head, if you're intending to apply for the Bartlett Promise, you should tell your supervisor that that's what you're aiming to do. You should alert them that you do have a deadline, and they can help. So that can give a sense of urgency. So they can help make sure you do enough to get to at least get a viable looking application. Of course, it still needs to go through a process of approval, but they can maybe advise on how close you are to submitting.
Thank you. The next question, I'll ask you this, Kamna. It's regarding the second set of eligibility criteria. And I've got someone wanting to know, is being part of the LGBTQI+ part of that criteria?
So it's not part of that criteria. We have identified, on the basis of the data that we have on our current student profiles and on the pipeline, that means the pipeline that goes through from undergraduate to master's students to PhD students, and then into our faculty, so into academic staff. We've identified that there is an acute representation gap for people who are disabled and people from racialized minorities. We have not identified that gap with LGBTQI+ identities. So it does not form part of the criteria for that reason.
Thank you.
Should I take the second part that's related to that? Because I think that person repeated the question, and it relates back to the timing. That why is the result of the Promise Scholarship in September? That's the date that is required. So we worked backwards with when does the program start? What is the maximum amount of time that we can give for people to get their offer letters this year and still apply to the Bartlett Promise? So from the date of July to September, that's the minimum time that we need to do all of the processing that's involved in this. That's why it is in that September date. But that date in September is the very latest date that you would be informed. We would hope to be able to do it a little bit sooner than that, but you would certainly hear by that September date.
Thank you. Stephen, I can please ask you this question. Can applicants or candidates have external supervisors?
Yeah, I would say in a minority of cases, there may be allowance for external supervisors. It's not something I have direct experience of, as it happens. It may involve slightly complex arrangements where a member of staff may be brought in as an honorary member of staff and actually become part of the Bartlett as an honorary professor, for example. Or sometimes it may be that someone is kind of brought in an informal capacity. And of course, there is a class of, well, I suppose there are other kinds of studentship that involve industrial partners and so on, but that's a different, I think that's a different area. So I mean, I would say I don't have direct experience of that, but it's something that you would discuss with your prospective supervisor, because there could be someone from another institution who is a specific kind of expert in a field. But that's, I mean, as I say, a PhD is a unique thing, so there are certain arrangements that could be put in place.
Thank you, Stephen. The next question is, every applicant invited to have a dialogue with the Windsor Fellowship Group? Is that dialogue used for evaluating applicants, or is it viewed as an interview?
Yeah, thanks for that question. No, every applicant is not invited to the dialogue stage. We end up with, this has been our experience so far, that a lot of people apply who are not actually eligible, who don't meet the eligibility criteria. And so we need to operate some kind of mechanism to filter people that aren't eligible, even though they've completed the application form. We also, because it's needs-based, do a ranking exercise to try to understand the students or applicants that have the greatest need. We try to put as many students as we possibly can through to the dialogue stage. The dialogue is not an evaluative interview at all, because the people who are conducting the dialogue are not associated with UCL. They are a third party, and their job and the purpose of the dialogue is to give us more information about your context and about your circumstances. Any evaluation is only undertaken by the Bartlett Promise team, which is myself, Sarah, and Ian. And we do that through the information that is given on your initial application form and the information you choose to disclose to the Windsor Fellowship.
Thank you. Stephen, can I ask you this question? How long does UCL admissions take to process a PhD application?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I cannot give you a definite answer on that. We typically ask people to assume the need for a couple of months at least. The fact is, there's no definitive answer to that question, because it's also because it also depends on, it may depend on the degree to which you have had consultation with the prospective supervisor. I know that's not exactly the same answer, but I'm just giving this slightly broader picture. So for example, if you've already had a consultation with the supervisor, prospective supervisor, and you have you sent them a proposal, draft proposal, and they've given some feedback, then by the time you actually apply to UCL, you may already be very close to having a viable application that could be viewed quite quickly, reviewed by the prospective staff members, the supervisors, and the department as a whole, which could mean that you progress quite rapidly through the system because you put in more of the work before you actually applied to UCL, if you see what I mean. On the other hand, if you just like applied with a proposal that was, incomplete and not completely convincing, and you hadn't contacted anyone in advance, like you hadn't contacted a supervisor, and you hadn't contacted a department, you could just like fill in the form now, literally, and press the button and submit. And then someone would then, if you hadn't contacted anyone and hadn't indicated a prospective supervisor, it would take a bit more time because someone would need to work out, okay, what topic is this? Which part of the Bartlett does it belong to? And we do many cross-cutting topics in the built environment. So say the topic was housing, for example. Like housing is studied by several parts of the Bartlett. And so someone has to work out, okay, who might be the first supervisor, who might be the second supervisor, and so on and so on. And then by the time it's gone to a supervisor, prospective supervisor, they might look at your application and think, I like it. I like this idea, and it could be a viable topic, but it needs more work. And so they might then go back to you and say, you need to do a bit more work on the proposal. So it's a bit flexible in that respect. And then once the supervisor has approved it, or the supervisors make a recommendation, it then goes through to Central College and the admissions section of UCL, and there have to be checks on degree qualifications and any other aspects like that. Or whenever that's done, that in the process, that takes some time as well. And it's not something I can predict how long that would take. So you probably need to leave a good amount of time, perhaps 2 to 3 months. You need to be prepared for that. If you're in a hurry, of course, if you can make sure that everyone knows what the urgency is, then we always try and, I mean, those involved in the application process will always try and respond as quickly as possible to urgent cases where scholarships or studentships are hanging on that. So you should try and make contact with someone as soon as you can, probably, and to make them clear make it clear what the urgency is.
Thank you. HM, this one's for you. What is life like as a PhD student at UCL?
I mean, I like this question because I like talking about it, and I have talked about it in so many occasions. And first of all, it is very rich. I think the most important, the best thing about the Bartlett, it is richness. There are so many different kind of research, and all of them are top notch. Like all of them are the best in their field on the planet. So if you have the motivation of, I would like to work with the people who are taking their work super seriously, that's where you will come. And because of those richness, you may end up developing interest on expertise, something you weren't thinking of. So I'm coming from a 100% designer background. So all my education was about the architectural designer. I had zero experience in writing or proposal writing or essay writing, whatever. And but now I fell in love with science. It is the design is still part of my life, but the science is just so exciting and so rational that I can't stop working on it, and I would like to build more and more skills before I leave this school, because this is a very good opportunity to build skills. In the pre-pandemic world, we had a lot of things to do. Like the first 2 years of my PhD, I went to conferences, one of them in China, the other one is in Germany. Both of them are funded by the Bartlett. And then I went to Eritrea, Africa for a field trip with the group I was working as a teaching assistant. We spent 10 days in Eritrea. You know, we make videos, we saw a lot of things. That was very rich in terms of teaching experience, not directly related to my research, but in my case, I'm really interested in teaching. So it was very important too. Just after that, I went to Yale University and I spent one semester at Yale University. And again, my tuition fee, which is $17,000, was covered by the Yale University. But because Bartlett has a agreement with that, like not big, I mean, the institution who paid the money is the Yale University, but just because I am a PhD student at the Bartlett. And so like all these are opportunities that you can take from UCL. Obviously, you don't have to, like this is independent research project, different than other PhD programs on the planet. If you do your PhD in the States, teaching and taking classes is the requirement. At the Bartlett, it is more optional. If you would like to focus on only research, you can do that too. So it is up to you, and I like that flexibility too. So that's it. Like it is very rich.
Thank you. Next question is, what happens if a student is unable to complete their PhD within the required 4 years and they need an extension? And will that affect or have any implications on their funding? Kamna, do you mind please answering?
Let me take the second part of that, and maybe Stephen takes the first part of it. If I do the second part first, just because I'm unmuted, the scholarship does not go further than 4 years. It is 4 years maximum. And if we were to do any of that, if we were to expand it beyond 4 years, then what we're doing is compromising our ability to offer a scholarship to someone else, because that money can then be put together to make a new scholarship. So 4 years maximum, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just take the opportunity to start on a slightly different point that I meant to say earlier. The selection process doesn't take account of need. So it's almost like the other way around from what Kamna was saying earlier. So our committees and our selection process, you know, we simply look at the academic merit, and we just assume that whoever the applicant is, that they can fund themselves somehow or be funded. You know, whereas the Bartlett Promise is the other way around. So they don't care if about the details on your academic record. If the academic supervisor is happy and everyone's happy within the department, then you get in to study. And then if you meet the criteria for the Bartlett Promise, you get the funding that way. As a preface to the answer to the question. So the thing is, on the timeline that you just were asking about, that, as Kamna's just said, that won't be extended. So in terms of the funding, but in terms of your need to continue working on your thesis to finish it off, then in a sense, you just become like any other normal doctoral student who has passed the 4-year point now and has to just keep going. So it's not unusual for this to happen, let's say, and it's something that all departments and faculties in the whole university wants people to finish in a timely way. But for one reason or another, you know, and again, to emphasize, a doctoral study is unique, and there are all sorts of things that can happen in 4 years, either to do with the research, things happen in the field and you end up doing something else. You have to change direction for some reason, or there could be a COVID pandemic could happen, or something else might happen in your life, change of personal circumstances, that means that you have to, that for one reason or another you don't finish within the years, then you just keep going. Basically, it's not like like a master's or an undergraduate where you might have to submit within a given time, or else you fail to complete. So it's expected that you keep going until you complete. I hope that answers the question. So there are people who still go beyond the 4-year limit in order to finish off, but obviously you would need to support yourself during that extended period.
Thank you. HM, this one's for you. Do you interact with different disciplines, and how often would you say that happens?
I mean, in the, again, pre-pandemic world, it was different than it is now. Now, for my case, in my case, I meet with people from other departments more often, because somehow I find myself attending online activities, and people tend to attend those more often now, and I end up meeting with them. But in the before the pandemic, what was happening, you mostly stay in your faculty, like I don't know what you mean with different disciplines. So if you mean people within the Bartlett, there are always chances to meet with them. But if you mean people from neuroscience, for example, that's a bit more difficult if you are not going to doctoral school events, because neuroscience has a different building, and as architects, we are kind of notorious in terms of we use the common buildings. We tend to stick in our environment, but at the same time, it also depends on your interests. If you are working, if your particular subject is something in between two different disciplines, that would make sense to obviously reach out those people. And UCL really like interdisciplinary research, so they always encourage you. And further, this is like an advice: if you can do it, definitely go for it, because it makes getting funding much more easier when you are interdisciplinary. So just keep it in your mind.
Can I just add also, you can have supervisors from different departments or different parts of the Bartlett. You might be studying some aspect of transport networks, for example, and you could have your first supervisor in school planning and a second supervisor in CASA or the Energy Institute or somewhere else. And that will depend, of course, on your topic and who the supervisors who are available. But that's a very easy way, if you did do it that way, to plug into more than one network at a time, because you might end up going to the seminar series for one school and then going also to the seminar series for another school. And there are also faculty funded seminars and events from time to time, which draw people together from across the schools anyway. So I would say, I would say the Bartlett is a very rich in terms of the interdisciplinarity. I mean, we have doctoral researchers in everything from, the history of cities, the history of documents, to the chemistry of the chemical fabric of paper, to built materials, to robots, to slime molds, probably, biological interactions with buildings, energy, domestic meters, global shipping. It's a very diverse place to start with. So there are always opportunities for talking to someone in another field.
Thank you. Just to remind everyone, we have just about 10 more minutes before the end of the session. So do get any last questions in now, please. Stephen, this is to clarify your previous answer to the previous point in your the answer. Supporting yourself would mean, does that mean in living expenses, or would you be expected to pay the fees to cover an extension of the time over your 4 years?
Well, we start getting into some of the details of the administrative processes. We have the university has a system called completing research student status. And that is a special status towards the end of writing up, where if you can demonstrate that you are in effect within a year of completion, although there's a longer time allowed right now due to the COVID pandemic, then you enter this special phase when you're not, where basically your findings are probably found and you need less supervision, and you're more working on your own, just finishing writing up your document. And at that point, the fees aren't expected, or aren't payable. However, until you get to that point where you're ready to go into that level, that status, then it's normally assumed that you will continue in the normal state and you will continue to pay fees. I think that's the quickest way I can answer that question.
Thank you. What are the opportunities for collaboration between different departments at UCL? For example, someone would like to know if part of their PhD was having to make some form of artwork, would they be able to access facilities or collaborate with the Slade School of Art?
I can't tell you specific examples from the School of Architecture, for example, but in principle, yes, there are possibilities for collaboration. I mean, a lot of the supervisors themselves will have contacts in different departments, will be enthused by possible cross-departmental and cross-faculty collaborations. So between architecture and art, for example, perhaps between parts of architecture or planning and engineering or construction project management, which is part of the Bartlett, might intersect with engineering. Some of our topics will intersect with geography. There is really, there isn't necessarily a limit to that. The point is, the first thing you need to do is to find a home to start with, like at least one person who's ready to be your primary supervisor. If they're enthused about what you're doing, they should understand the need. Like, for example, if you need to be talking to neuroscientists, they should be, inspired to help make those connections with whoever you need to talk to help make collaborative things happen. And of course, you can have supervisors across between different faculties. So you could have a second supervisor from geography or the Slade or wherever. Those things can all be worked out.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much. I think that's all our questions. I'd like to say a massive thank you to the panel, our academics and our students. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you do find that you have further questions even after this, please go onto our website. It's just been popped, the links have been popped in the chat section. So please go in there, and there's a detailed FAQ with loads of question and answers on there. And you also find email contacts in there as well if you have a particular or more specific question to your situation. Again, I'd like to say thank you to everyone, and hopefully we'll see you sometime soon at the Bartlett. Thank you all for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.